Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Dose. I'm your host, PP, and today we are going to be covering some very interesting topics. A very highly sought after topic, which is, of course, weapons. All things weapons from A to Z. Not that there's many weapons to cover from A to Z, but we'll be covering them nonetheless. But before we do jump into it, thank you so much for all those that have been a part of the journey from the beginning and all those that have jumped on along the way. We did finally hit that 500k subscription mark. Not 500k, just 500. Not yet half a million, but we may get there one day if the game grows that big. But we did get to 500 subscription. Hopefully it's a good indicator that we're going to be well on our way to 1k. And then we can start, doing some live streams, doing some account tune-ups, getting into the GT Arcade partnership program, maybe getting some gift codes, some exclusive stuff like that, which would be fantastic. So if you are new or visiting, welcome, chill out. It's going to be a fairly lengthy one. Being weapons, it's kind of important to cover most aspects from both early game to essentially mid game, which is probably where I would see the Warlord account on. Basically having access to legendary weapons to test out, and talk about them in generalities. But ultimately, when you start out, you are going to look very similar to the Baby Yawning Way. You're going to have access to this. I think between not chapter, player level 30 to 40. I want to say maybe it's a little bit higher than that, but basically you're going to have access to this wheel. You're going to get this one on the very first free one, so it's the Wallow Song Bow. Is what it is. Basically, your character's going to have it equipped. It is, let's be honest, it's pretty shitty, but it's free, right? And it's a weapon, and it gives you power. You're going to equip it. And then what's going to happen after that is you are going to get something called a God's Blessing appear, very similar to what this looks like. And in that God's Blessing, if I remember correctly, we'll have to use the old memory here, you're going to get an option to buy the General's Blade. Looks pretty decent when you look at it, right? Problem is, it's rare. So it can't be upgraded to Epic. So ultimately, you can spend $8 Australian or $5 USD and you can buy this, and that's fine. It'll serve its purpose. Honestly, you're not going to be using it for very long though as you build your actual epic weapons, so just keep that in mind. It's not a very good investment, but it is an investment nonetheless. If that's something that you like to do, spend lightly, you're going to get a sword for it essentially, and it's going to boost your power level. Personally, I would pass up on that, but that's just me. In terms of what else you're going to get access to, you're actually going to get a ancient scimitar for around $50, about $40 USD, depending on what the exchange rate is. This is a bit of a trap. So ancient scimitar in the God's Blessing. So this is all in reference to what you'll be able to purchase in the packages. Essentially, this is only good when there's two or few enemies on the enemy's team. So realistically, the attack bonus only kicks into that one hero you'll equip it to. You do get some, flat statistical buffs. I mean, I'm not going to discount the flat statistics that you'll get, like 8k attack, 300k HP. That's all nice and stuff like that, but the honest truth is, it's not something that's very viable at any point within the game. If you've only got two enemies left, it's really just you killing them a little bit quicker. And again, it's probably not something that you would be like, oh wow, yeah, I just did really cool damage. It's not one of those. It's not one of those weapons. It's a little bit useless. And I've tried this out on my other account. It does proc a little bit, but the problem is you need to get it up to 4-star in order for it to hit 3 or fewer enemies, so proc when half the enemy team's dead. Then you get 20% attack, so it becomes slightly more viable at that stage of the game. But remember, this is not something that's going on throughout the game, so it's, well, when I say game, throughout the match, well, the battle, whatever you want to call it, it's not procking all the time. Obviously, it can't because there's going to be more than 3 enemy heroes up when you begin. So you're either in that situation where you're slowly I want to say getting to the point of being bursty enough to kill everyone, and then you're either going to be able to kill most of them real quick, or you're going to be like in for a very very long fight, and maybe then you would have some advantages early game. But honestly, it is not worth $45. Do not spend money on that at all. Don't do it. Don't do it. You will thank me later. It is just wasted VIP points. So, what then happens? Well, I want to talk a little bit about the strategies around Treasury and the strategies around acquiring some of these weapon tokens. I won't delve into any of the other epics or legendaries just yet because we're going to jump over to the Warlord account. So hopefully the video transition works well. I can't pause this unfortunately, so I'm going to have to start again when I jump on there. But it should be seamless in the editing process. But basically, you're going to be able to purchase these tokens for a little under 2,000 gold. You're going to get 10 of them. And the reality is, every now and then, and I would strongly recommend those that are new to start saving for this event, unlike me, you're going to get a Divine Weapons rebate. And it lasts about 2 days. And as you can see, you're going to get opportunities to summon your Divine Weapons. Essentially, every time you do 10 draws, you're going to get some shards to the old mate Dragonlance. I believe there's only about 60 or 50 in total that you'll get. It's not a phenomenal amount for the 80 pulls that is required, which is going to cost you around 15k gold to do it. In all honesty, it's just another aspect to the game where if you've saved up those Divine Weapon tokens, yay, good for you. If you haven't, you may want to spend a little bit depending on how short you are, but just be mindful that there are better events in the game to spend gold on, like Limited Heroes and Billionaire event, which kind of give you different types of items in exchange. All things relatively speaking though, you can buy like 55 shards of a legendary weapon for around 11k gold. So it is on point with its exchange rate. The only thing that I would say that might make this a little bit more tantalizing is the fact that you're going to be able to pretty much hit this if you've been doing it like, you only need 100 to hit this. There is a 1%, I want to say it's 1.09% chance to get the epic weapon itself. Excuse me. Which I did manage to acquire at least one of them already, just for doing some pulls. I've done 41 pulls already. Probably regret that. Some of them I should have done that and saved for the epic chest, but I completely forgot that the Dragonlance rebate is a thing. So if you know what I'm talking about, and you probably already been like, shit, yeah, I missed that. Don't worry, we all sometimes miss that boat. But if you're a new player and it hasn't arrived on your server yet, just be a reminder that you will get the Emerald Lyra, which is another legendary weapon that will appear in a rebate, and potentially will get the Serpent Halberd appearing in a rebate. So keep saving your treasury tokens, keep saving your premium recruitment tokens. Make sure you save them. I haven't saved many on this account because it's new, but I would strongly recommend start saving after, day 15, day 16, which is when this appeared, day 16. Okay. I think that's pretty much covered why you should be saving the tokens for the rebate events, but where do you actually acquire the tokens? So the best way to get these tokens is from here. You get 3 a day, you just purchase it. You should have more than enough of the Legion tokens. If you're not in a Legion, you're doing yourself a disservice. Get in one as soon as possible and start farming. Doesn't matter if they're super active or not, you can get Legion tokens pretty much by doing absolutely nothing. And it's a good thing. Another place where you can acquire some of the tokens, and I don't know why they are doing this. I honestly have no idea why they are going in and attacking in the Legion event. It's just odd. It's odd. It's odd. But anyway, if you want to acquire some weapon tokens here, you are going to need to smash out 80 attempts. It is a very long-winded process. Is it worth it? Probably not. Starting wars, it's never worth it. There's always a bigger whale. I would like to preface that. There is always a bigger whale. So be careful who you want to fight in this event because you may just get your entire guild killed repeatedly until you swap out to a different siege event. It is a high possibility that will happen. Fair warning. But if you want to brave it out, you want to get those 3 weapon tokens. Well, this is something you can do each week before the reset. Alternatively, if you go into, well, I guess we can cover it here. I should be able to show you here. There is I want to say, maybe it's the chest, and I can't show you it. There was a chest up here. Is it this one? Maybe it's this one. No. It's potential that I can't get it this time around. No, that's the premium hero summon. I know that there are some chests in here which may be from later events. I can't remember. Or is it a boss battle? I feel like it's one of these chests, but it could be potentially later in the game that they give it to you because, let's be honest, these rewards are pretty shitty. For some reason, I remember on my other account that I was getting the weapon summons for some of these chests. Alright, well, I can't show you that. That sucks. Well, if you know what level you start to acquire those, if you do acquire them, let me know. Maybe we'll check them out on the Warlord account if I remember. But I had a recollection that they were somewhere within there as well as the premium recruitment summons. But anyway, it doesn't matter. There's another place that you can get them. You can't buy them from the shop, unfortunately, but you can get them in Expedition. So if you haven't already unlocked your Chengdu city yet, make sure you're aiming towards that for Expedition. Don't be lazy like me and forget about it. It's a thing, it happens, I know. But the reality is, every Sunday you're going to hit a Warlord event. And in the Warlord event, you're going to have an opportunity to spin 15 times. It's going to cost you a little bit of gold to do the last 5 attempts, but it is worth it, all things comparatively. You are going to get 4 additional weapon tokens per Sunday. So that's pretty much where you can acquire them each week. Each day, the most important one is the Legion. Make sure you're getting those 3 free ones from the Legion. Once you unlock Treasury, it will become available. Now, I think that pretty much covers everything that we need to talk about from a new perspective. Of course, you should just be equipping weapons and stuff like that whenever you do the rolls for the epics. After you've saved up for your rebate events, you'll be able to acquire quite a lot of them. If you want to talk real briefly, we'll talk really briefly about how to upgrade these weapons. Where are they? Why? Everything is hidden away in this game, I swear. So essentially, once you unlock them, you're going to require 80 shards. It is important that you keep that in mind because 80 shards takes a little while to get and they're not always accessible. From a new player perspective, probably the easiest way to get this, of course, is by doing the spins each day for free. If you get lucky like I did, I managed to get the Black Feather, which of course I equipped to Simi Yi. Yeah, Simi Yi, that's it, not Zhu Jiang. No, this is Simi Yi. But essentially, you're going to need shards to level these bad boys up all the way to 7-star. In the beginning, it is quite easily to do it because it's just 4 shards apiece. All things relative, that's pretty cheap, you know. But it does, like everything in this game, it ramps up astronomically towards the end. Oh, trust me. We'll have a little look about that on the other account. But essentially, you still just need shards like heroes to level up. You don't need as many to begin with, but it gets to be a fuck ton later on. Absolutely. We'll talk about the weapons a little bit after this. But as you can see, just by doing your daily spins and stuff like that for free, you're going to have the opportunity to acquire some of these shards. But once you do them, of course, we can't not talk about the weapon shop. Eventually, you're going to be able to acquire enough souls from doing your daily free spins that you will be able to start to purchase something here. I would recommend focusing on ones that you're currently building. It will help you out immensely. Yes, you can focus purely on one, but sometimes it's good to have 2, just like this, in case you don't get either or on the wheel. It's better to be building 2 of the 6 than not to be building any of the 6. So as you can see, I can't get anything here. I ran out of souls. It is a very, very slow process, but ultimately you will get there in the end. All right. I'm going to jump over to the Warlord. We're going to continue this conversation. Then we're going to do some player testing. I'll be back in a second. We're back. Thank you so much. As you can see, I have not jumped on this before the reset. So we're just going to have to claim all of this. Resets are very different depending on which area of the world you're in. We do have the billionaire event up, but we will cover that in a separate video. So basically, as we continue along, we're going to look a little bit at the actual epic weapons now, and then we're going to get into rating them and ranking them, and then we're going to talk about the legendary weapons. Then we do some player testing, and there's some other aspects we talk a little bit about with the legendaries as well. Now, in terms of this, I'd like to preface going forward for epic weapons. I do value some over others, and we're going to discuss why. It is situational depending on your team and your nation, but generally speaking, weapons are they're just additional aspects to the gameplay. Then there's not really very many groundbreaking aspects to them. They just add something. They add a different element. So what I'm trying to say is don't be afraid to test certain things out yourself, depending on your nation. I'm going to give it from my perspective as a Warlord player and potentially as the Way player too. I can see why I would still value them the same way, but I would just like to preface that. Don't take everything that I say as gospel. Do it, test it yourself. You won't regret it. And of course, that helps you to be a better player. And please, at any stage during the video, drop a comment down below. Let me know your favorite weapon and why, and what you're aspiring to build towards. Now, as we continue, I would probably rank these. Let's just rank them out. So we'll go into the index because it's a little easier to see. We talked a little bit about the ancient scimitar, which is this one. But let's just talk about them from the perspective of worst to best. So I would say Conqueror's Halberd is potentially the worst epic weapon. And if you don't like that, hear me out and then let me know why you disagree. But essentially, increasing defense by 15% when HP is below 15% on your hero, it's not going to save you. It's realistically not going to help you as much as you think it would. Defense, in a lot of ways, is mitigatable. A lot of attacks have the ability to bypass defense completely. A lot of the beast attacks, they do not factor in defense at all. They go straight to real damage to the target. There's, of course, elements of physical defense and magic defense as well, which means if the attack is hitting you for magic, it's technically going to bypass physical defense. This is just 15% defense. It doesn't talk about magic defense. It doesn't talk about physical defense. It is just simply a flat percentage stat. As you can see, within the weapon, there is actually magic defense, which is M.DEF plus 13k, as you can see right there. And of course, there's physical defense P.DEF plus 24k. So that's kind of like a breakdown in terms of what defense is. As a raw statistic, some attacks hit physically, some attacks hit with magic. It is just a part of the game. And 15% is not going to save you. If we're going to look at it from a term of what a 7-star form is, and I guess at this stage of the game, we should really be looking at what 7-star investment will get us. Conqueror's Wrath, increased defense by 25% when HP is below 25%. Again, look, that's probably not fantastic. I would like to probably preface that in saying, if you're at 25% and you get some more defense, sorry, I just had to turn that off. If you get, 25% additional defense, I mean, granted, if you've got some healers in your team, maybe they can sustain you and bring you back up to full health. Look, it's just not something that I would say I would prioritize. It's really not going to help you out in a lot of situations. You're not going to be like, oh yes, my halberd procced, I'm going to not die. Chances are you're probably up shit creek and you're going to die anyway. So realistically, Conqueror's Halberd is not going to help you. Perhaps there are situations that it could, but I still don't even think Trials, it would be very good there either. So moving along, I would say the Ancient Scimitar comes in as the second worst weapon. For obvious reasons, it's only going to proc in the very beginning when there's 2 or less enemies, and at the very end when there are 3 or less enemies. Essentially, 20% when only half the battle is over is probably not fantastic. 20% attack in retrospect, when you think of it like how much does a how much do some of these charms buff you? 15% real damage bonus, just not attack based bonus. For I feel like Dank Stack's Epic Charm does that. There's quite a lot out there that will buff you more crit accuracy, attack percentage just by proccing after round 4. Um, in all terms and all relatively, it just adds to your overall damage experience. It's not going to do anything phenomenal for you. Realistically speaking, I probably wouldn't invest heavily in doing this ancient scimitar. I just don't think it's as viable or necessary as other weapons, which we'll start to cover. Moving along, we have the third worst, which is arguably, it's interchangeable here. Some would disagree with me, others would be like, yeah, you're on point, but Sunfire Blade is very interesting. Now, Rage, I'm going to say Rage and active skills are interchangeable. Rage is when you get 4 of those little fire symbols and then you do your hit. And it's generally your active skill or your daily, depending on what you would like to describe it and which RPG you're very familiar with. But in terms of the game, it is called Rage, and it has a 30% chance to burn 3 random enemies, reducing their HP by 30% of the caster's attack. Now, it is very interesting the way they worded this. I think it is incorrect because you are in fact not reducing their HP by 30% of the caster's attack. You're just doing 30% damage. You're just doing 30% of the person you've equipped it to's attack-based damage. It can be very confusing for those that English is their first language because it kind of reads like you're actually reducing the target's HP by an entire 30%, i.e. you've just chunked a third of their HP out, which does not actually translate that way at all. It is just 30% of the caster's attack, and it does it over 2 rounds, and it ignores their defense. Again, if you had the halberd on, this ain't saving you against the halberd ain't saving you because it just mitigates defense percentage. But it does it for 2 rounds, so it's just like a burn aspect like Wu Nation does. Now, if you get all the way to 7th star, the reason this falls out is I want to preface this. I want to talk a little bit about why I think this is probably not fantastic. It's dependent on you having the ability to use your active skill, your rage ability, right? So if you're fighting other PvP nations that have, and there are a shit ton of them that have rage reduction on them, like Wei Nation, Warlord has them. I know Shu, some of them have them in Shu that can reduce still your rage. Yeah, basically it's a gamble. And on top of that gamble, you only have 50% chance to activate it. So flip a coin and hope that you have enough rage when it goes off. Basically, it's not that it's just really not that viable when you look at it from a holistic point of view. 50% is not that great. And you kind of want anything over 50% if you're going to invest in a weapon. And yeah, honestly, 3 random enemies for 40% of the caster's attack. Yes, it ignores damage. It is a bonus and it does it for 2 rounds. But ultimately, I would pass on this. I would pass on this. If you're building it, that's fine. But for me, I don't think this is viable for my nations. Maybe it is viable for your nations. Let me know what you think. Moving on, I feel like this is a contentious one here because it's almost identical to the Sunfire Blade, except it's just a little bit better. And the reason why I would say it's a little bit better is because each normal attack has a 50% chance to poison 2 random enemies. Now, if we look at it from a holistic point of view, I've got this ranked up to, wow. At base level, it's 50%. Let's just put it that way. And the max Sunfire Blade is at max 7 stars at 50%. So there's kind of already a, big difference there. But let's say from a 7-star perspective, each normal attack has a 75% chance to poison 2 random enemies, reducing their HP by 40% of the caster's attack. So you're just doing 40% of the caster's attack damage over 2 rounds and ignores defense. So the reality is you're in the same boat as the Sunfire Blade, because you have to be dependent on the fact that, well, if you do face enemies that are draining you of your rage, at least this is going to proc a heck of a lot more. And I can guarantee you, when we do some player testing, you can see this thing proc quite a lot. And that could just be because we're reversing players that were draining the rage ability. But so ultimately, it is quite I would say, a dependable weapon artifact that does do quite a lot of damage based off who you equip it to. Because remember, it's 40% of the caster's attack. So you kind of would be looking to put this on somebody who does hit quite hard. Mainly, I put this on Jiaju. I quite like it, and we'll get into the reasons why I would equip it to him, but we can talk about where I guess you could look at it from any nation's perspective when we jump into that side of the video. But this is not bad, and you're probably thinking, okay, so why is Zhuge's longbow potentially number 2? The reason I would put Zhuge up there is not necessarily its attack percentage, which is not actually significant. At all the way up there on the tippy toe, you'll get to 60% chance to proc. But what I think makes this shine a little bit more is the fact that it hits like a bit of a truck. It hits 137% of physical damage, and this is, of course, based off the person that you are equipping it to. So it can hit very, very hard, and of course it targets the hero with the lowest HP. So it's sort of like, I would say it's very beneficial. Uh, when you see it start to attack the ones with the lowest HP, sometimes that's all it takes is for that one hit of the volley to strike. You kill them, and then of course, because you should be building with Mechanical Bird, then the Mechanical Bird would ultimately proc. So it kind of adds to, I guess, the flavor of the battle. Because it is a substantially higher level of damage, there are some things there, though, that can mitigate physical damage, like we talked about before, defense and physical defense. But ultimately, it's going to hit hard if you put this on some of your offensive-based heroes. Um, I just think that this potentially has more in terms of damage scale than the fan does. It's interchangeable. Let me know, do you think the fan is better, or do you think Zhuge's crossbow is better? But last but not least, we of course have the Twin Sabers, and the Twin Sabers are kind of an interesting item. A lot of players probably sleep on this and go, oh yeah, that's fine, and then they go, but it doesn't really do anything, so we'll just probably relegate that, put it in the back of their mind and be like, yeah. What you should be doing, though, is not sleeping on the Twin Sabers. You should be building this first. This should be the first weapon you build, and here's why. Because ultimately, this thing is a badass. It gives your hero that you equip it 35% chance to crit when there's 3 or more of your heroes alive, and when 3 or more of your heroes are dead, then basically you get 35% block chance. Granted, block is not phenomenal, but it adds to your survivability in total. You're really only getting this for its offensive feature, which is that 35% crit. Now, 35% crit is actually significant if you factor in that some heroes and some nations have quite a significant amount of crit buffs. It's going to put you over 100% crit, meaning you're going to guarantee every round to do some nasty damage. Particularly if you get to the Trials of Towers, the Tower Trials, that's actually quite nice. I will get into this a little bit now, because then we can start to look at the statistics. I don't care about beast hunts. Leave me alone. But basically, we're going to talk about it from what these means. So if you look at my main hero here, I have a 78.4% chance to crit. If I remove this, I have lost lots of power, but I have a 78.4% chance to crit. So we know that this will only engage the raw statistic 30%. If this arguably, quote unquote, was 7-star, it would be 35%. At the moment, it's only 20 something. But in the battle, it will trigger at the very beginning of the round, and I will get that crit bonus. So it's almost 100% chance for me to crit. I would say, is it actually 100% chance? Yeah, it is 100%, 22%. So I have 100% crit chance. There potentially could be some crit resistance things here. i.e. some of your enemies might have this thing here down here. It says crit resistance, minus 17% of your crit chance against them. But still, look, it's still, I'm going to say, it's still a pretty hefty chance to crit on an enemy. And if you have abilities that have that also, and they also include some form of crit damage, well, lo and behold, you're going to be doing a lot more damage if you equip this to one of those heroes. Now, in terms of legendaries get a little bit more in depth. And the reason why they get in depth is because they generally have a shit ton of additional words with them. And they don't always make sense. So let's jump into the index. Let's have a look to see what we're talking about here. We're going to start with, I guess, what I would say is the only healing class weapon in the game, which is a subclass. So I'm not going to rank this within the other legendaries. For now, anyway, it appears that the Emerald Lyre is the only healing weapon that I can find. That may change, of course. Kind of like the Cyan Rook, the last of their kind. Kind of useful, but kind of not useful at the same time. But we'll get into the reasons why. Now, the Emerald Lyre probably goes without saying, you probably want to be attaching this to your support heroes. If you don't have a support hero like a healer or a buffer, you can potentially stick this on your protagonist if your protagonist isn't doing a lot of damage. And you have other better DPS options to equip on any of your other weapons for. The reason being is when the hero is in battle and there's the same number of heroes in battle, or when you have fewer or the same than your enemy, this gets confusing, but essentially it's going to proc all the time. Any attack or heal has a 60% chance to heal 2 allies with the lowest HP percentage. It's 79% plus 300, increases their defense for 10% for 2 rounds. That's that at its base form. If you, for some reason, want to invest all the way up to 7-star, then you will, of course, have a 100% chance that any attack or heal will give 2 of your allies with the lowest HP 111% of that target's attack plus 600 and increase their defense by 30% for 2 rounds. It's not terrible. It is what it is. It's going to be like one of those things that just adds to the overall survivability of your team. Kind of like Cyan Rook, that oh shit moment when he heals all of your team. It is very similar to that. I recommend putting this, as I said, on a support hero, like a healer or somebody that does buffs as well. But potentially, if you're stuck and you've built this, you can equip it on your protagonist. You're not going to really hurt yourself if you do that. Generally speaking, protagonists are weak without transformation charms. It is a thing. VIP 10 is a little bit different, the skin on that, because of the rage debuff. But hey, look, at the end of the day, you're still going to be equipping this on someone. I would recommend doing it on support if you can't put it on your protagonist. Anyway, moving on to the other more interesting types of legendary artifacts. We're going to call them artifacts, we're going to call them weapons. It's all interchangeable here, but you know what I'm talking about. We have Daochan. Now, this is a fuck ton of a wall of text, so bear with me as I try to explain this. I'm going to do it in layman terms. We're just going to say, basically, this thing, wherever it's equipped, is just meant to attack the hero with the highest rage. And like charms, it does a splash damage effect. If you know what I'm talking about, go into your charms and look for one that says splash, hit demo button, and you will see that it hits people in the surrounding areas of the target that it just struck. Now, it does 90% of the target's attack. It ignores defense. Now, this is pretty strong. When you think about it in terms of 90% of someone's attack, it's fairly strong, right? It's up there with Zuja's crossbow. It hits, it's quite nice. But what gets interesting about this is that it then has a 20% chance to silence them for 2 rounds. That's not bad. It's not fantastic, but it's sort of on par with the base level Daochan that has a 20% silence chance for 2 rounds anyway. So it's like this additional thing, it poisons and it has a chance to silence. When below 50%, so the target that has the highest rage that it struck, any attack will reduce damage bonus of all enemies within the target area. Again, we're talking about splash damage by 15% for 2 rounds, with a 20% chance to silence them for 1 round. So it actually goes on and transfers to anyone within the splash damage area after 15%, or below 50%, I should say, and then has a chance to proc silence on them for 1 round as well. So it's not a terrible artifact, but the problem is that the percentages of silence are just very, very low. So ultimately, when you think of it from an investment strategy, you'd probably be thinking, okay, well, we know that it's going to be pretty kick-ass at upgrade 7. Would I invest in this to get it to level 7 over other legendaries? I would say currently it's, I mean, it's on point. When we're talking about every round has a 50% chance to silence for 2 rounds, that's pretty epic. I'm not gonna lie. That's a legitimate skill. That's a legitimate CC effect, and of course you've got the splash effect too. So if the target has with the highest rage is below 50% and this procs on it, of course everything that it splashes also has a 35 percent. So bonus damage reduction 35%, and it has a 70% to silence one of them or anyone within that vicinity for 1 round. It's pretty nasty. I'm not gonna lie. Moonfan it's definitely up there on top of my list, but the reason why I'd probably rank this as the third lowest in terms of DPS is just because of its accessibility at this point in the game. It is harder to get this. It is much harder to build this than say to build the Dragon Lance or even the Serpent Halberd, because the Serpent Halberd and the Dragon Lance are in a lot of packages. They're in a lot of the monthly packs. They're in a lot of the rebate packs. They're in a lot of the quests as well. And being new, the Moonfan, it's not really there yet. But when it becomes more available, I probably will start to focus on building that and building that up, because that's kind of nasty, having that ability to plus splash effect and normal effect of silence. Don't sleep on silence. It means they can't do their active, which essentially means that they're always going to have the highest rage, which then essentially means that you're going to keep proccing your silence on them. Do you get my drift? Just thinking outside the box, it's nice to do that every now and then. But if we're going to turn and we're going to talk a little bit about the Dragonlance next, I would say this is probably the second best out of all the legendary offensives that are available now. In terms of this, it's kind of self-explanatory. I like it when it gets simple. When you have more of the same heroes in battle, very similar to Emerald Lyra, essentially, when you're at like peak and it kind of, I want to explain this. So when you start to lose heroes, this is when you don't proc it. When you have more heroes than the enemy, you can proc it or the same amount of enemies. So basically you want to have, when you have the upper hand, the Dragonlance shines. When you don't have the upper hand, it's not so good until you start to balance it out and you get back to even or neutral. And then it will proc. If you're below neutral at a loss of a hero, you're not going to proc this thing. It's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of why it's the second one. I don't know why they design things like this. It should just be 100% uptime. But anyway, you have a 60% chance to deal 125% physical damage to 2 random enemies and increase your crit by 20% for 2 rounds. This is fantastic on those that you need crit on, the ones that have natural crit damage in them. Well, you can check this out for yourself, but ones that have natural crit damage statistics, this is a fantastic weapon to put on them because it pretty much guarantees that they're going to be doing more damage overall. Crit damage is very, very important in this game, and in Trials of Tower is extremely important. So we know, we talked about it already, physical damage can be mitigated or reduced based on physical damage defense or defense statistic as a whole, but it's still a fairly good weapon. It gets better as you go along. The chances of it striking gets up to 100%, and it's 175% of physical damage through 2 random enemies. And of course, that sweet 40% crit is phenomenal for 2 rounds. You're basically going to be proccing this bad boy every round in battle, depending on your situation. I'd say it goes off quite a lot, and you'll get to see it go off quite a lot as well. I imagine at 100%, it's pretty much a guaranteed 40% crit for the remainder of the fight, as long as your hero stays alive, that is. But yeah, it's pretty damn good. I quite like it. I think it Overall, I mean, look, is it fantastic in terms of the damage it does? It's on point with Zuja's crossbow. Maybe a little bit better because it strikes two targets and has more damage percentage. But really, what you're equipping this for, well, we just got kicked out because we didn't have enough space. But we'll continue on. Might have to edit out some of those things, or we can keep it raw. I'll decide later on. But basically, we're doing this for crit. We love crit. Crit is fantastic. I absolutely love the fact that you have this follow me button. And I probably should be doing some of these things as well. But I'm going to untick this now because it is starting to annoy me a little bit. Anyway, as we get into it, we're going to discuss a little bit more. And this is probably going to be what I would say is my favorite one out of all of them, which is going to be the Serpent Halberd. I think in terms of its additional features is what I like about it. Let's talk about it from, well, we'll talk about it from a space step. So when HP is above 50%, so whoever you have this equipped to is got more than 50% HP, should be most of the time, right? Any attack has a 60% chance to deal 81% physical damage to the enemy with the highest attack, and any other enemies in its vicinity, so again, splash damage, has a 50% chance to trigger twice, and a 10% chance to trigger 3 times. So it's essentially doing 3 times 81% physical damage to everyone within that splash vicinity. Also increases accuracy by 20%. Game, this is huge. Chat, this is huge. 20% accuracy, wow, mind blown. It is almost impossible to get accuracy in this game as a base statistic. It is woefully, woefully low. And you're going to notice that eventually you're going to be missing so many targets that it just gets redonkulous. You're like, how the fuck do I miss with 100% accuracy? Well, you need 160% PB to get past certain stages in this game. It is absolutely mind-boggling. And this weapon kind of mitigates that, at least for one character, because as you see, you start progressing along to 7-star, that 30% accuracy for 2 rounds is, I just can't say how good that is. It is realistically one of the best statistics in the game that you cannot get. I love it. There are some heroes that buff accuracy. I'm very jealous that I cannot build that with the Warlord Nation. But we may look at it later on when we hit Gen 5. But ultimately, accuracy is very, very, very vital in this game. And so you're probably thinking early on, it's a niche stat. You don't need it. You do. You do need it. I'm not lying to you. When HP is above 50%, any attack has a 100% chance to deal 113% physical damage to the enemy with the highest attack and other enemies, and it has a 70% chance to trigger once, 30% chance to trigger 3 times. It is a very overall, I would say it's a combination of like Zeus's crossbow and down chance splash damage. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's great. I wouldn't be doing it for the physical damage. I'd be doing it simply for the accuracy, because accuracy is king. In terms of battle statistics, everywhere else gold is king. Never forget that. But anyway, I would say this is definitely something that I will continue to invest in as far as I can, and I will start to build on the fan, and of course I will round out the Emerald Dragon for the crit. Not the Emerald Dragon, the Dragonlance, I should say, for the crit. But yeah, it's essential that you start to work towards building this. We can have a look a little bit of the Blue Blade. That should be the next one. So when rage is 4 or greater, attack deals physical damage, yada yada yada, plus 7% of max HP of the enemy, cannot exceed 300% of own attack. This is kind of like, it's an interesting one, because it only procs when rage is 4 or greater. So I could see this being very good on Shoe Nation teams that have a very high turnover of rage. And because it does do 7% of max HP of enemy, up to 300% of your own attack, that's pretty cool. When rage is below, enter defense mode, gaining 15% defense and damage reduction when attacking for 1 round. It is what it is. It seems like one of those bursty kind of weapons. Definitely a Shoe Nation weapon. Ultimately, I feel like people will be building this. if they can sustain 4 rages or greater. I know Matcha has a pretty high chance of being able to chain his rage attacks. Like every attack, he can get 4 rage. HH Wiles is gonna really help too because he's gonna buff that party with 4 rage as well. I'm just thinking from a shoe perspective. I think this would be a shoe's wet dream. Blue Blade probably really good. Um, I'm sure it has applications in other parties as well, but as you can see, 15% of max HP target cannot exceed 600% of own attack. That's a whopping hit. That's better than all the other ones in terms of raw damage, and of course, then they've got the damage mitigation and defense for 1 round as well if they're below 4 rage. I think this is a fantastic blade. Will I build it? I'll have to really have a look to see what I'm at with everything else project wise. I recommend building the base statistic of everything and then, figuring out pushing past that. That's just my advice is I would build the base statistics of your base legendaries, your base epics, and then after you do that, you can decide where you'd like to advance. Now, moving on, when we talk a little bit about upgrading the legendaries, it's you need shards, of course, but there's another component to it as well. So let's just check that out. There's actually this ability called Imbue, and it's the same as Vanquisher, exact same concept. Basically, you just put in old shards of weapons, and you gain experience. And as you progress along, you'll be able to advance some of your other weapons. Now, this is just like a way for you to scrap old stuff. I don't really have a lot to show you, unfortunately, because I don't have a lot of other shards. I didn't really invest too much. I kind of was very, very specific on the shards that I was going for. So I don't really have a lot to spare, but basically, when you get bored within the game, you can probably start to revert or regress some of these to back to shard form, and then you can feed them off. Because let's be honest, you're never going to use Ancient Scimitar again. Let's do it. Let's do it for the sake of the video. The things I do for you, chat. The things I do. Divine Weapon, reset. Let's go. You know what? Let's just go. Oh, I actually don't even know if I can use General's Blade. Let's try General's Blade. If I can feed General's Blade, that's going to be fine. I can live with sacrificing that General's Blade. Let's see if we can. Oh, of course, it's not going to let me. See again, my point exactly. You don't need General's Blade. It's an absolute waste of space. You can't even use it when you want to. It's just a waste. All right, let's reset this. Let's go. Ancient Scimitar, you are essentially useless, although I will probably go Conqueror's Halberd. I really don't like you either. All right, there we go. Let's see if we can do this now without any more interruptions. There we go. We've got 170. One of these shards gives 1%, I think. Yeah, it looks like one gives, or maybe a little bit less than 1%. I think it gives like 0.9% or something like that. I don't know statistically. It should be 1%, but for some reason the game didn't allow that to happen. But there you go. So when you imbue, by the way, all of your heroes acquire that, so all allies get that buff. It's going to be a very expensive task, by the way, for you to upgrade all this, but absolutely it is worth it. I would recommend regressing some of your older weapons that you don't use and going from there. But yes, as you can see, that's one extra additional component to it. Now, in terms of equipping, this is where a lot of people are probably going to ask those questions. For me, I equipped Twin Blade to my protagonist because I am using an epic avatar, which is Zhu. Oh, no, it's not. It's, who are you? What avatar are you? Yuji. Yeah, Yuji does AoE attacks. I want him to crit. I want him to poison everyone. That's why I went with him. The Archon, I went with the crossbow. Don't ask me why, just because I slotted in her with the crossbow. She works with it. I always shit on Zhao Qian, but the crossbow doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's just going to attack the lowest HP target. And of course, it has a 6% chance to attack, so I just put it on an offensive hero. Zhao Qian, you've got the crossbow. Do what you like with it. In terms of Black Feather, I did put on old mate Zhu or GU. Jiaju. We're going to go with Jiaju. The reason I did that was because his active ability has a very, very high percent chance to poison everyone. And his normal attack is going to have a very, very high percent chance to poison even more people. Poison does stack, so I do like that as an overall statistic. He actually hits pretty damn hard as well. But giving him the option to poison both on his active and his normal attack is why I picked Black Feather for him. I think it works quite well. I like the way it synergizes. You guessed it, Emerald Lyra is going on Howtao because we need a healer. And unfortunately, I do not have the right gear for him. He needs the Vermilion set, but yeah, I swapped him out for Zhongzhao because I need a healer as I progress in some of these chapters, man. You really need a healer. Don't sleep on healers if you can. Make sure you always have one fully maxed out, just ready to go, like this boy. But basically, we've got him, Emerald Lyre, it works well on him. Interesting fact with healers, all healers have this thing called Healing Increase. Healing Increase does not affect the outcome of the artifact. It only affects the outcome of the individual and the healing spell. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean Emerald Lyre does, if we can actually look at it. It doesn't mean that Emerald Lyre does 79% plus 110% plus 100 and yeah. So this doesn't mean it does 79% of Howtao's attack plus 100% healing bonus. As far as I know, it only scales off attack. It doesn't scale off other statistics like healing bonus as well. I could be wrong though, but if you do know that for a definite, drop me a link in the Discord showing me that it does do that, so then I can, maybe add that to another video to confirm. But as far as I know, the additional healing bonus that healers get does not impact the weapon itself. Dragonlance. I went Dragonlance on old mate Zhao Shi because, again, it really doesn't really matter about who he attacks. What's important for the Dragonlance is, of course, the overall attackability of the hero, though. So I kind of wanted to go someone with a little bit higher attack. I would recommend putting this on your second best hero, somebody that hits hard, just because you want to maximize the amount of damage that the old lance does. At the moment, at tier 3, it's 144%. And we have all the added bonuses with it. But yeah, 144% of old mate's attack bonus is going to be hitting 2 targets. I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, but obviously, if you need some help with that, let me know in the comment section below. I would advise equipping that to your second strongest hero. Ultimately, it's not bad for him to crit either. You could work this out to be your second strongest hero, could be your highest critting hero as well, which would be pretty cool as well because you're going to get some buffs. You have to work within the parameters of your team, and you have to start to look at some of the stats that your team does. Don't sleep on this, chat. Do not sleep on this. Crit and crit damage, crit strength. This guy's got 2% crit strength. Well, actually, he has 0% crit strength. But he has a nice amount of crit. So I want to boost that crit to about 50%. It is what it is. I like it because this guy can hit hard because he has enough attack to hit hard. But I also like the fact that I'm going to boost his crit just that little bit more. And when I get this to 7% or 7 star, I should say, it's going to be like an extra 40%. That's decent. 60% crit chance, I'll take that any day of the week. You got to manipulate the stats. In terms of this guy, Zhu Jiang, I like him with Serpent Halberd. The reason is I want him to hit all the time. I need his accuracy right up there. I want him to get as high as he possibly can. And his AoE strikes all targets. It is what it is. I think it's one of those dealer's choice moments, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter about the halberd in terms of its ability to proc. It's just any attack has 60% chance to deal physical damage to any with the highest attack. So realistically, this is just going to scale off old mate's attack base, and he's got 804.59k attack. So, it's a decent whack. Plus, I want him to be higher with accuracy because I notice a lot of heroes actually evade his attacks, which is very fucking concerning because he hits everyone. And the reason I want him to hit everyone, and this is purely from a Waller perspective, is because of that sweet, sweet rage reduction. he really does have a legitimate chance of reducing the target's rage by 2, and he hits everyone. So technically, he can reduce the entire enemy's team round 1 by 2 rage, making them go back to their normal attack. He is quite lethal, and that's why I like using him in slot 1, but I feel like sometimes he just misses. He also buffs the team with evasion as well, but that's another story. So yeah, let's jump into it. Let's see how we go with some of these battles. We'll talk about how they proc. As you can see, I was starting to get my ass handed to me later in these chapters until I spiced things up a little bit. But when I spiced things up, I added some healers, and now I don't die as much. Formation-wise, we're going to go like this. We're going to challenge them. We're going to see it proc, and then we're going to end the video there. Of course, I think we've covered most aspects of it. If you do have any questions, hit me up in Discord or the comment section below. Myself or somebody else will be happy to answer that. Tom hasn't died. He's still alive. He does watch the videos. I don't know if he's invested as much in the terms of weapons, but yeah. So as you can see, whenever the weapons proc, it appears like a symbol on the screen. We might be able to see it with Zhao Shi. Yep, so his lance, the little symbol for the lance pops up. And the Emerald Armory Crusher pops up. And then, of course, we have the normal rotation of Karkadan. Then his Serpent pops up. And then, of course, the Black Fan. And remember, this is all statistic based, so it's not always a guarantee that you'll see this proc, but when it does, of course, it will demonstrate that on the screen. The only one that won't proc will be PB, because we basically have more than 3 heroes alive. So if we had 3 people dying, then he would proc again, and it would show him switching to the block statistic for his twin blade. I like the fact that he is critting quite a lot. Be interesting to see. I did change things up slightly before by putting the Serpent Halberd on Zhu Jiang instead of putting the Dragon Lance on him. So I want to see just how much more damage he does. I also want to see how much more damage Dao Chan does now that she's running a crossbow. Because we're using Hao Tao, so it doesn't make any sense not to equip Hao Tao with the Emerald Lyre, being a healer. I like the fact that we're getting a lot of poison going on here. Come on, heal everyone, Hao Tao. You can do it, man. I believe in you. We may die. We may die. That sucks. I'm going to turn auto battle off for a second here, because I need to use that AoE heal. I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to be using the last healing. Yeah, we need to get that AoE heal going. Oof. Come on, Hao Tao. You got this. You got this, man. We might be able to kill the guy in the front row. Whoa, it's very close. Cyan Rook finally proc. Thank you, bird. That cost me a fortune. You finally did your job. And we healed, and we'll try to stun them with Shank. It's only a 20% stun chance. We did get one in the back though. I'll take that. Oh yes, poison them all, and we'll burn them together. That's why I like using this combo, because of the burn ability. It stacks quite nicely with poison. But as you can see, we managed to outlast them with Hao Tao in the team. I'd say the setup is quite nice. I'd say it's working quite well. When in doubt, just take off Urdo and do it yourself. I was getting my butt kicked by this team before this, so I'm happy with that. Now look at the statistic wise. Yuji with the fan, he's doing pretty good. Zhang, it's going right. Dao Chen actually did more damage than she normally does, so that would probably be attributed to the crossbow. Zhao Shi, pretty average. He doesn't really do a lot of damage. He's there to transform the back row. Infernal Qui-Gon did some Infernal Kwang Ji. The Fire Kitty did some damage. What about healing? Can I have a look at healing statistics? Game, are you going to let me look at healing? No, you're probably not. That's odd that it won't let me look at healing. All right, well, we can assume that Howtow did his job because everyone lived long enough and Saber Charm certainly did their job as well. Zhu, I told you, if anyone doubted, don't sleep on him. He is an absolute beast in terms of legendary heroes. I would strongly recommend playing with him as your first legendary if you want to build him up. He's very, very strong. All right, I think we'll leave it there. We'll talk about Billionaire in another video. We'll cover everything else about the event. As you can see, I've got 13k gold. Um, so that'll be for the billionaire event, and we'll do some spins and we'll do some value analysis as well. If you found this interesting, mildly intriguing, at all entertaining, please consider hitting that like, subscribe, and share button. You are more than welcome to share this with your discords or whoever likes to potentially look at the game. I don't know. Some people play lots of other mobile games. Maybe drop it in some of those chats as well if people are curious. Check out some of the other videos. There's like 900 of them. Some ridiculous amount of number of videos out there. We do keep it real in a daily dose. Anyway, I will catch you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.